The Hidden Child by Camilla Läckberg. Read by Eamonn. In the stillness of the room, the only sound was from the flies, a constant buzzing from the frantic beating of their wings. The man in the chair didn't move, and he hadn't for a long time. He wasn't actually a man anymore, not if a man was defined as someone who lived, breathed, and felt. By now, he'd been reduced to fodder, a haven for insects and maggots. The flies buzzed in a great swarm around the motionless figure, sometimes landing, their mandibles moving, then flying off again in search of a new spot to land, feeling their way and bumping into one another. The area around the wound in the man's head was of particular interest, though the metallic odour of blood had long since vanished, replaced by a different smell that was mustier and sweeter. The blood had coagulated. At first it had poured from the back of his head and down the chair onto the floor, where it formed a pool. Initially it was red, filled with living corpuscles. Now it had changed colour, turning black. The puddle was no longer recognizable as the viscous fluid that ran through a person's veins. Now it was merely a sticky black mass. Some of the flies had had their fill. They had laid their eggs. Now, sated and satisfied, they simply wanted out. Their wings beat against the window pane in their futile attempts to get past the invisible barrier, striking the glass with a faint clicking sound. Eventually, they gave up. When their hunger returned, they went back to what had once been a man, but was now nothing but meat. All summer long, Erica had circled around the thoughts that were always on her mind. Weighing the pros and cons, she would find herself tempted to go up there, but she never got further than the bottom of the stairs leading to the attic. She could blame it on the fact that the past few months had been so busy, with everything that had to be done after the wedding and the chaos in the house when Anna and her kids were still living with them. But that wasn't the whole truth. She was simply afraid of what she might find. Afraid of rooting around and bringing things to the surface that she would have preferred not to acknowledge. She knew that Patrik was wondering why she didn't want to read the notebooks they'd found up in the attic. Several times he had seemed on the verge of asking her about it, but he'd held back. If he had asked, she wouldn't have been able to answer. What scared her most was that she might have to change her view of reality. The image she'd always had of her mother, who she was as a person and how she'd treated her daughters, was not very positive. But it was Erica's all the same. An image that was familiar, an unshakable truth that had held up through the years and had been something she could count on. Maybe it would be confirmed. Maybe it would even be reinforced. But what if it was undermined? What if she was forced to relate to a whole new reality? Up until now, she hadn't been brave enough to find out. Erica set her foot on the first step. From downstairs in the living room, she heard Maya's happy laughter as Patrik played with her. The sound was comforting, and she put her other foot on the stairs. Only 5 more steps to the top. The dust swirled in the air when she pushed open the trap door and climbed up into the attic. She and Patrik had talked about remodelling the space sometime in the future, maybe as a cosy hideaway for Maya when she was older and wanted some privacy. But thus far, it remained an unfinished attic with wide planks for the floor and a sloping ceiling with exposed beams. It was partially filled with clutter. Christmas decorations, clothes that Maya had outgrown, and boxes of items that were too ugly to have downstairs, but too expensive or too fraught with memories to discard. The chest stood way at the back, near the gable wall. It was old-fashioned, wood with metal fittings. Erica had a vague notion that it was what they called an America trunk. She went over and sat down on the floor next to it, running her hand over the top. After taking a deep breath, she gripped the latch and lifted the lid. A musty smell rose up, making her nose twitch. She wondered what created such a distinct heavy odour of age. Probably mildew, she
Sample complete. Ready to continue?